What's going on, guys? Welcome back to AI Infused Network with me, Riff. Now, today I'm excited to bring you guys this video because I've been thinking about the evolution of DAWs, okay? So, for lack of a better word, what happens to Pro Tools, FL Studio, Cubase, all these work studios, workstations after the introduction of AI? Because we've already been using AI with these digital workstations, but we haven't really used them in this way, right? So I wanted to look at that in this video, and also just to kind of give you guys an insight of something I haven't seen on YouTube yet. So it's just a different perspective, and then just what the future will be of the producer. Okay, what is the studio going to look like with the introduction of AI? But before we get started, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. You already know how YouTube works. Helps out with the channel, and we really appreciate you. So without any further ado, let's get going. All right, okay. So digital audio workstation DAWs, right? I mean, a lot of us as producers probably started with like a FL Studio. I rarely know a producer who started making beats off of Pro Tools directly, right? Even though Pro Tools is pretty old, started back in the 1980s, and these DAWs pretty much mean you no longer needed like these analog, right, studio equipment, all the big, heavy. I mean, a lot of producers still use the analog. A lot of music we listen to is still using analog, but they are mixing it with the Pro Tools as a final kind of cut. So it's actually quite interesting. So let's take a look at where we came from, right, and how we got to the current version of Pro Tools, FL Studio, all that good stuff. Because in the 1980s, it wasn't as obvious, right, that people wanted to do it digitally because the analog was still number one at the time, right, with this music workstation from CMI, right, is the first one that allowed you to kind of sample music, and you already know how sampling was back in the day. It was very, very, very good, actually. And nowadays, everyone feels like we're kind of oversampling, okay? In 1982, we have the New England Digital and introduced another audio workstation. This is the second one. Now, it was still very analog based, as you'll see a picture of in just a second. But then in the 90s, we get Pro Tools, and then it kind of became the industry standard from there, okay? Now, someone like Quincy Jones said this, right? The move to digital audio was revolutionary and allowed me to edit and manipulate audio in ways I never dreamed of in the analog days. So just let that sink in for a second, right? Somebody that's one of the top best producers ever, and just says, wait a minute, switching to digital allowed me to work a lot more efficient. Right now, a lot of people are having the opposite thought about AI, right? Producers don't even want to talk about it because they think it's like, copying the music. But ultimately, aren't we all just copying? I mean, Quincy Jones saw the light. Then isn't it a good thing that the computer is advancing? Anywho, so you can see once it was introduced in the 90s and kind of became standard, we had Cubase come into play, Ableton Live, and a lot of this software was also simultaneously used with concert and live performance, like Cubase, for example. And you can see the market share in Cubase makes sense because people, you got artists and, these rock stars, these rock bands who are using it to help them with their live shows. Like if you do a lot of live shows, then you're most likely familiar with Ableton because it's very good with like a lot of instrument pluses and stuff like that. And then you got Pro Tools and FL Studio, who a lot of producers still use FL Studio to make instrumentals and make beats because it's just a lot easier. Like I first learned how to make beats using FL Studio, and then from there I was able to learn everything else because kind of similar in a lot of ways what the workstation is done. And to us, it kind of looks fairly old. Like if you look at this picture of the Fairlight CMI from 1979, 1980, look at that thing. I mean, it still needed some manual labor there. There's still a lot of analog buttons you have to press there to get going, but that was the most digital thing we had back in the day, right? And then you have the MPCs, which kind of it's still popular right now. They're still releasing newer versions and improvements with the MPC, and it is quite nice to use, right? So if you ever seen videos of like famous producers in the studio and they have a bunch of those squares lit up in like multiple colors, that's your MPC, okay? And that pretty much can make an instrumental within itself, right? You can sit there, just make it, and then you can export that stuff to Pro Tools or whatever DAW choice you have. Now, Pro Tools became the kind of standard, right? It's because it's this easy to use workstation. I mean, you can look at it, right? It's super easy to use. It can look, quite intimidating if you, but you just have to kind of start with some kind of foundation. And so the biggest, I would say, trends with the DAWs has been the cloud collaboration. Now, this is kind of like the next step that transition from being able to save it all on your computer, which if you produce music and you started producing music at a very young age, you had a computer crash. Okay, you've had one of these things happen to you before, right? Computer crash, lose some music, etc. You have to restart the program. So this is why it led to cloud collaboration, right? So a lot of people went, okay, let's say if we put something on the cloud, we'll crash less, which I'm sure is the case, but it's still a little bit slow and it's kind of funky. I personally never used it, even on Pro Tools myself. I never used the cloud collaboration because I don't know, I just don't trust the cloud yet, but it's just something that I haven't seen a lot of producers using, but I saw why they created it, and I just didn't think it solved the problem, because everyone still, just grabs some physical memory sticks and have that in there, as opposed to using the cloud, because, you kind of want your music to be in and out of whatever you're using. And then it's AI-assisted mixing usage now. This is actually interesting because I've tried this with some reverbs and some kind of plugin. There's a lot of plugins that you can use that have AI assisted where you click on it, it kind of listens to the music and gives you the best option. But those are not very good yet. Okay, I'll just be honest. Not, even the one from Waves, like Wave Studio, you can click the listen button and it kind of decides for you. But it just never really works, especially with vocals. It just doesn't quite fit. You still have to do a lot of tuning. So the AI assisting in the mixing is not used very well, okay? And then the touchscreen workstations, I don't think it's a big deal for, producers, like whether something's touchscreen or not. But let's look into the AI right now. Let's go back and kind of think about what the future would look like if you added AI fully to like FL Studio or Pro Tools, for example, right? So when you add AI to these things, let's go back to this image for a second, right? So these hardware, imagine if you added AI to the MPC, for example, right? So the new MPC, you add AI to it. Say you are making a beat and you are stuck on like, whatever instrument you want to use. You can't tell if it's a horn or, a pad or something or a synth. So you just make the sound on your microphone like and then the computer kind of decides, we'll go with the synth, and then it inputs it without you having to do anything, puts it right there, puts the reverb on it, right, and you just tell the computer, hey, I kind of want this sound here, and it makes a decision. That would make your workflow crazy fast. But I also think it does make you more efficient, right? So adding AI to these programs will make you a much better producer. I mean, it's just like, adding cloud computing or all of these digital reverbs and EQs and all these effects you can add to somebody's vocals or somebody's instruments and stuff. It's the same thing as adding, new technology, but the AI is just cutting that work. So now, instead of me watching, 65 videos on YouTube on how to use this particular reverb, you can have this AI that already knows what the reverb would sound like based on, whatever it's been trained on. And then you can just go, okay, hey, this is a club song, this is a hype song, this is a slow song, and it already can adapt to the AI, giving you the craziest level of productivity as a producer, right? So who doesn't want that? Like, who doesn't want to turn beats around quickly? Now, you can, also, once you can turn something around quickly, so what's the, like, how can you get that sound again? Because everyone was chasing the right sound. So now, imagine AI developing completely new sounds, new mixing, new reverb techniques, all that good stuff, because it can take what we've already know how to do manually, and it can just digitize it and create new versions. Mind blown, right? So the future for these DAWs will be amazing, and I know a lot of people, a lot of producers don't want to talk about this because they're kind of like, this thing is either copying our work or whatever. It's kind of like the whole AI and art thing, because again, music is art in a lot of ways, but I don't think AI will inhibit producers from, making quality stuff. I just think it will allow a lot more people to become producers, right? But maybe we might get different style of beats now, right? Because now we're still getting the same, 4-beat measures and mid-tempo beats and stuff like that. Like, imagine if we get different types of beats. They're still kind of on time, but they just sound completely different. And the more people you get into it, the more, variations you're going to have. So I hope this type of presentation guys give you a little bit of insight, especially if you're a producer like me and you make a lot of beats and you're in the studio a lot of times, to kind of think about how AI will be incorporated. There's a lot of companies working on this, but I have not seen any news yet from, FL Studio or Pro Tools and guys, but as soon as I do, I will update you guys, make it part 2 of this, or how they're incorporating this AI, because the easiest way to do it is throw it on some plugins first, but instead of actually throwing it on the entire program. So I'm excited to see what that is. What do you guys think AI is going to do with these type of DAWs? Okay, and are you excited about it, or are you kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen? So let us know in the comments, and like and subscribe for more of these type of videos, and check out the channel. Whatever you like, we have a variation of things, and let us know what else you want to see, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Deuces.